Why Gen Z men reject feminism?
Why are Gen Z men saying f*** off to feminism? Yesterday, BBC News shared an article that showed the widening gap between Gen Z men and Gen Z women, with a particular trend showing that Gen Z women are becoming more progressive and Gen Z men...
I saw the graph. Yeah. Remember it was the two graphs, one like South Korea where it was like a huge difference, and like, you know, in the UK and all that. Yeah.
...are becoming more conservative.
This is true.
Now, this is nothing new. It was shown that this was happening in America before, and it's happening across the West. And for me, it's incredibly fucking obvious why this is happening. Because feminism and the left in the present day do absolutely nothing to support men. They do the opposite. They demonise, they stigmatise, and they ignore their problems. Why would young men be drawn to an ideology that on the surface at least comes across like it hates men for being men?
Well, the problem, and this is what I was saying before about how like people that are parasites infect things like feminism and then they use it for like their own personal gain. Like there are things in places where like women do have disadvantages and women have legitimate problems. But whenever you have like women who just actually hate men that are like, yeah, I'm a feminist and I hate men, this makes all feminists sound crazy. They want control. Yeah, exactly. And so this is a huge issue. And this is what I was saying before about how like one of the big problems with like these spaces like feminism and like, you know, gaming circle jerk is also another really great example. Like we just got done talking about that, is that the problem that these people have is that they are unable to regulate their own extremism. So you have people and they're unable to self-regulate and have a consistent ideology. And the ideology always gets co-opted by somebody who is more and more and more extreme. It's easier to take over an existing platform, build one from scratch. I mean, I think that this is, it's true, but also it gives them a certain level of credibility. How many women directed genocide throughout history? How many men? Well, pretty much all men. I mean, like, and again, it's not about like a lot of guys. You think about it like this. If you're a Gen Z guy, if you're a Zoomer guy, you are 22 years old. You don't want people to hold you responsible for what a guy did 100 years ago. Nobody that was around then is even alive anymore in a lot of these cases. Like everybody that was involved with this is dead, but people are still getting mad at you and holding this against you. What the fuck is this? Nobody wants to be born with original sin. Okay? Like they wrote a whole book about it. So the truth is that that's why people are unhappy about this stuff. And also I think that guys probably, like, for example, I think OnlyFans definitely, and like the advent of things like OnlyFans definitely like kind of blackpilled a lot of guys. Whenever it's like, you know, you're a 19-year-old guy and you can barely get by, but like your 19-year-old, you know, friend that's a girl is able to make like $8,000 a month on OnlyFans just because she's attractive. I think that that really bothers a lot of guys because it is unfair. Now, in my opinion, I don't really think that's a big deal because that's just the way that life is, and men and women have different advantages in life. But for a lot of guys, it really bothers them because they don't have the context of being 33 years old like I and a lot of other people in chat do. So that's the difference.
And that is not what feminism is meant to be about. In theory, according to some definitions, it is meant to be about gender equality.
I think if you want to have a word that's about gender equality, it shouldn't be gendered.
To do is chat to the average feminist or see the average feminist influencer on social media, point out some of the inequalities that men face, such as in the education system, such as in mental health care, and such as how the economy is changing today with the decline of traditional jobs. Do they care?
Well, I think also like any person can observe the fact that there are a lot of resources out there that are explicitly for women, and there are not a equivalent number of resources out there that are exclusive for men. And because of that, a guy who's struggling sees that and they begin to resent women because they have an advantage in these circumstances or they have more support in these circumstances, which is a natural response. Again, monkeys can detect unfairness. Not a surprise that guys can do the same thing.
No, absolutely not. But what will they do? They will blame men for it. They will say it is the fault of men themselves. It's the patriarchy. Men have built this system, therefore it's their fault. But when it comes to women's inequality, it's a systemic problem, which is weird because when it's men's issues, it's them that's the problem. It comes from inside. Yeah. But for women, everything else is outside. Again, it's men's fault. And the reason they do...
I think that men also do this too. This is a huge issue, and I've talked about this a lot, about how like guys are, and like people in general are like so fixated about blaming and putting the responsibility on some sort of like outside factor to stop them from having any accountability from their actions. So it's like, oh, I'm not sexualizing myself. You're sexualizing me. I'm just having OnlyFans because I like my body. You know, this is also like, it's bullshit. But at the same time, there's also guys like, oh, all women are hoes and like it's hoflation. I can't get a girlfriend. It's like, you can't get a girlfriend because you keep sending them a picture of your dick randomly. Like, stop doing that. Like, not every single bad thing that happens to you in life is a problem with culture. Sometimes you are the agent of your own demise. Sometimes it's your fault that bad things happen to you.
Most of the time is because they're fucking ignoramuses. They haven't done their research. They haven't looked at the data. They haven't seen that inequality exists for both men and women and that it's desirable to address both of them. And they also haven't done the own self-reflection to see that the stance they're taking of pointing the finger at men and blaming...
I think that men do the same thing to women too, by the way. Like, obviously, like, I think that, like, culturally and socially, women definitely have like an advantage in terms of you know, how many people are like agreeing with them and telling them that like they're right, and it's much more socially acceptable to say I hate men than saying I hate women. But there are a lot of guys that also create this like culture around like the reason why you have problems in your life is because of women. Well, that's probably not the case. There's probably like 10 other reasons why you have issues, and people constantly look for that external factor that they can blame for everything else that's wrong in their life. And that's what ends up happening. And so people are like going and seeking out this content that just reaffirms that all of the bad decisions they're making are actually good decisions. I think it's actually crazy how blatant I see sexism towards women on Twitter, though. It's definitely somewhat accepted. Well, I think that the reason why you see a lot of sexism towards women is because for a long time, like, women would say things or do things that were like very clearly sexist towards men, and then men would like not be able to respond because Twitter was moderated in an extremely like super censorship way. So now that you see guys that are able to say and think what they want, well, then that's what happens. That's what people really think. It's more of a resentment thing. Yeah, it is. It's just an unhealthy. Yeah, I think it's an unhealthy backlash. You're totally right. And I think it's bad for both groups. And I think also like there are people who basically profit off of, you know, making this divide larger. And I find it to be like a huge problem. Like things like Andrew Tate, etc.
Rather than trying to address the problems, is a reflection of their own ego and refusal to accept changing information. And the problem with this is it's created an enormous vacuum where you have a lack of male support on the left. So it's all come from the right, who are not much better either. It's just led the way for this very fixed traditional idea of masculinity, where if you don't conform to it, you're seen as a beta male or a soy boy.
Well, he's totally fucking right. I'm glad he said this because this is absolutely fucking true. It's like, this is the idea. Like, the problem is that, and you see this with a lot of these like male influencers and like, you know, manosphere influencers. Like, these people are like what a teenager thinks a guy, like a cool guy is. That's always what it is. It's never somebody who like usually has all their life together and like things are going well. It's like it's like this, you know, like a 14-year-old's version of like what's a cool guy. Soy boys, yeah, GTA characters, basically, yeah.
But the left are in complete denial about how they're aiding this side of the right.
They are.
And they will say something like what I'm saying now as a more neutral observational stance is akin to that. They will say that anybody who dares to criticise feminist ideology or woke ideology must be a Tate-supporting right-winger. And people can see through that bullshit. They're sick of it. And guess who most of the people are?
I think that most people don't like to be, like, for example, this is what happened with me, is like whenever I started criticizing like some of like the Sweet Baby stuff, and like the people on Twitter, like they just start making stuff up about you. Like it's not even like they care about what's being said. What they care about is trying to bully you and pressure you into shutting the fuck up. Like, that's what they're trying to do. They're not trying to win an argument. They're trying to shut down an argument. So yeah, of course people don't want to deal with it. Of course people are pushing back against it because nobody likes to be oppressed.
That are sick of this. The young men, the ones who are being told by those people that they're the bad ones. So what does feminism need to do? Start fucking listening to the problems that men are facing and stop pretending that they don't exist, because inequality can exist for both sexes. Check out leading male inequality experts like Richard Reeves. Check out the American Institute for Boys and Men. Check out the all-party political group for boys and men. Start looking into the crisis of masculinity. You can read a fantastic article by a feminist author called Christine Ember in the New York Times discussing the problems that men are facing. Because when more feminists start taking male inequality seriously too, because it is not beneficial to society as a whole, then we will have less of this divide. Men are not collectively...
Well, that's not going to happen, because the reason why is that there's a lot of people who have problems in their own life, and it's a lot easier to sell somebody the solution that it's everybody else's fault than to sell them the solution that it's your fault. So what ends up happening is that the reason why like social media influencers and people that push this information always focus on, like, for example, like this is true for a lot of like political content creators too, is that it's like there's always a focus on like, well, you know, you're not successful because of capitalism. Well, maybe in an abstract that's kind of true, or like in some disconnected way, but the real reason why you're not successful because of capitalism is because you spend all day on Twitter talking about it. You're not actually improving your life. You're not trying to make anything better. But if you tell that person that, then they're going to say that, oh, well, now you're against me. And then they leave and they stop consuming your content. So what it does is it creates like what I was talking about with like the toxic self-help meta and like the vicious cycle where people with problems look for self-help on the internet, and self-help on the internet oftentimes blames an external source. So people are kind of trained into this learned helplessness of never actually improving their life, and even being told and having the implication that if you have to improve your life, if somebody's telling you to improve your life, all they're trying to do is uphold a system that's trying to oppress you, so then they become the enemy.
Bad as an entire gender. But
so it's an entire culture that's created around teaching people learned helplessness and then telling them that it's everybody else's fault for their own bad decisions.
Who are collectively bad, people who believe that they are. And what will those people often identify themselves as? The word begins with an F.
The world is the problem, not me. Any solutions? I think the solution to it is to have better family structures. And the reason why I think a lot of guys do this is because they're looking for an internet dad or an internet older brother or uncle. And that's really the problem. I think that the reason why this is happening a lot is because of the lack of family structure and the lack of respectable father figures in media and also in people's personal lives. So they're constantly looking for that, you know, because you don't have, like, for example, like I was very lucky. I grew up, like, my dad was a great father figure, and, you know, a lot of the other people in like my family were too, and, you know, other like friends of my dad, everything like that. So I never really had this issue personally. And it's sad for me to see other people that do, because it's just such a massive hole. It's like they don't even know. It's like, how do you be a man? How can you be a man? They're not even sure how to do that. So they're spending $10,000 on a 3-day course where a guy yells at them, and so they can LARP around like they're Navy SEALs. So that's basically what ends up happening. And so they don't even know what being a man is. It's like, from their idea, being a man is, you know, having an expensive car or having 3 girlfriends or something like that. Because they have no socialization, they're not trained to understand these things, and big surprise, they don't. So yeah, they need a YouTube tutorial. And so I think that's the reason why it happens. It's the lack of family structures. It's the lack of active parents. It's the lack of strong masculine role models in people's personal lives and also in media. Like, if you want to look at a strong masculine, what should be the pinnacle, like, you know, peak performance of a man? It shouldn't be Andrew Tate. It should be Aragorn. There it is. Like, what are you doing sitting around trying to, like, have 6 different girlfriends? Like, what the fuck? Like, this is, like, what is this? Yeah. And there's plenty of other people that are like that. Yeah, Mr. Rogers, people like that. Like, these are people who are actually, like, just normal, average guys that are good, that try to improve the lives of other people. And it's like, there's this, you know, combination of, like, oh, well, you have to be dangerous or strong or something like that to be a man. Like, no, it's just like, it's again, like, this is a 14-year-old's version on what being a man is, because a lot of these people are stuck developmentally at 14 years old. So there it is. That's the reason why I think it happens. That is the fundamental. I think it's also the reason why there's, like, so many feminism problems too, is because like women have like, you know, asshole dads, and there's like guys in their life that like, again, because like, you know, guys grow up, they don't know how to act around girls, they make girls uncomfortable, and then girls hate men, right? That's just generally how things happen. Ned Stark, yeah, there you go. Do you think fighting economic disparity is also a contributing aspect? Yeah, sure, it is, absolutely. But I'm saying this is the biggest reason. And I think it's it is the reason that if this thing was solved, I think that it would cause more of an effect than anything else.